All right, we're back for another chat with Miss Nicole. And today we're just going to get into it. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, no matter what side you're on. I think we're all human beings and we can all relate to this topic. And I've been hearing so much about people who feel so lonely, they're afraid to talk. Um, if they just share any opinion that is different than someone's, it turns into a whole big thing. Over this past year, relationships, friendships have had serious issues because of this. So I think it's really good to just have a discussion about it, a short one, but just touching on this. And hopefully, this will help others who are feeling this way to just feel a little bit more empowered, comforted, something like that. That's kind of the root behind this whole conversation today. So, we're going to chat about feeling lonely in your beliefs and finding the strength to set healthy boundaries to live authentically. So, um, we've already been introduced to Nicole, but we'll go ahead and shoot it over to you. And how often do you feel lonely with your beliefs?
You know, it's hit and miss. I feel like we are in this. We're in a very big movement right now, and a lot of people are starting to speak up. I think I was on more of the front end of that. My husband is very strong-willed, but an introvert, and I'm like the extrovert, but I'm a people pleaser. So we kind of I don't want to step on people's toes. And he's like, you need to have a backbone. But yet so he has gotten me to really think deeply about things. And then we have one of the biggest things is making a list of our values and what we value as a family and as a couple and stayed true to that. And that has helped us tremendously because um, it's we have friends that are strong Christians, and they've went and had their daughter that's younger than our daughter baptized, but yet they don't go to church and they don't follow what we would consider the Christian values. And it's kind of without getting, like you said, totally one side or the other. I'm pro-choice, but I'm against abortion. I don't think that should be a choice. Um, and that is my Christian values. I think in today's society, one of the hardest things is people believe religion should be private, and that um, when you are out in public, you can't display your religious views. And that is the opposite, in our opinion, on what religion is. It's just unfair to anyone, regardless if you're Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, whatever you are. It's just unhealthy. And so for us, I think the other big thing is people feel like they're judged all the time. And that is something that I started practicing um, really before I started being more vocal about my views, because I was stereotyped quite a bit as a hairdresser. And I always thought, I shouldn't be judged for what I do. And now on the flip side, I see that a lot in just any sort of biblical perspective.
Absolutely. And then it's not just religion or faith. It seems like it's everything. Like we went from being so open and accepting of others, and now it's tolerant if you believe what I believe. And
Right.
then everything else is not okay. And it just seems like there aren't as many people willing to even have a discussion anymore, which leads into that feeling of loneliness because I think as human beings, we were created to need companionship, to be dependent on others to some capacity. And when those avenues get shut down, especially for stay at home moms, or even if you work, I think moms in general have it really hard. Men, you know, there's so much to that. So what are some of the other ways or, you know, topics, categories in your life that you feel a little shift and you don't feel like you have that space to just be as open as you would?
Right. I think you touched it there, saying, it's not, I think, and I went to religion right away, and that's what most people do go to.
Mhm.
Um, it is every aspect. I am very holistic. We have our own garden, we use our oils. I make my food from scratch as much as I can. Do we still have macaroni and cheese sometimes? Yeah, we still do that sort of thing. But um, even like the holistic living, I feel like I am almost more shunned or like lonely in that aspect than
Yeah.
I even am in my religious views, because people look at you like you're like, oh, so holy. Oh, you never use chemicals on your kid. Your kid, never going to get sick. You're never going to give them cough syrup. Well, there are natural ways. I kept I kept baby Tylenol in my house just in case it expired before I used it, and I was okay with that. I have that backup. But I think I almost get more. I feel like I only have certain people I can go to for that. And that is almost harder for me than my religious views, because I respect everyone. If you want to use Roundup on your garden, go for it. Like, that's on you. I don't care that if it's the same with religion, whatever you believe in is what you believe in, but don't hate me for it. So I think that is one that I actually feel more. I can only talk to certain people about it, which
Mhm.
sucks. But yeah, that's one for sure that I'd say it's like, oh, can I say this around these friends without getting like that roll of the eyes? And it's those little things that you're like, okay, well, was that offensive to them, or why did they roll their eyes? It's those little things that I don't think people realize they do, that, you feel like you're stepping on everyone's toes. And like you mentioned, what can we have an open conversation about it? Because just because we don't do the same thing doesn't mean that we can't talk about it.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned a few things too in the beginning, like with stereotypes, and
Mm-hmm.
then like those people facing the criticism or judgment. And that might be where they get very, I'll just say raw, for lack of a better term, like emotionally raw and very reactive. And I think, like you said, like a lot of people don't realize what it looks like from the other end either. They in
Yeah.
their head they're like, oh, I'm a very tolerant, open-minded, loving person. Well, and then it can look so different. um and going into that, like, I just want to make sure this gets talked about because it's something that can be very painful for people, and people aren't prepared for. So what happens with loved ones, people you thought you were very close with, that understood who you are and your heart, and then give you that type of response, and that can really hurt? What's that like?
Yeah, I think um, it's hard sometimes at first. I just kind of kept my mouth shut, and it was a hard pill to swallow. And it's like, you know what, we can disagree. You pick your battles. I had that mindset of, just pick your battles. We don't have to agree with it. We were very clear, luckily, from day one. And I guess this goes back from before my daughter was born. We had backlash, but we didn't care as much about what our family thought. Once we had a kid, we cared a little bit more, but it was hard, because you trust their opinion, and um, you don't want to cause riffles. And now we have family that we don't talk to, and it sucks because we have um, one of Nellie's aunts and uncles, and it's not necessarily the uncle that has anything to do with it, but now him and his two kids and her, they don't talk to us, and my some of the other family, because of some of the holistic things that we have chosen for our family. And it's like, nothing's getting pushed on you. And for us, that's hard, but we've learned that the longer we fight it and try to make it work, the harder it is on us.
Mhm.
And that took a little while for us to let go of what they believe,
Yeah.
what they believe is right for us. Um, it's like we knew it was our decision, and we knew it was we were making the right decision for us, but we still let their beliefs kind of pull on our heartstrings so much and affect our sleep, which affected our mood, which affected our health. And so when we finally said, okay, like let's let go of it, that's when they cut the string for communication. But it's also when we like, I remember the instant relief in the tension in my husband and my shoulders. And we cried, but at the same time, it was like, wow, like we feel so much better. And I hope that they feel better doing what they felt they needed to do. But I
Yeah.
think that's something that's, I know how hard it is to do because we held on for a long time. So I understand people holding on for sure.
Yeah. And going right into that, like how to set the healthy boundaries. And I will say that the toxic relationships, it doesn't have to mean that those people are horrible people.
Right.
It's just, I think it does come down to that closed mindedness and one just trying to push more and control that situation more so than the others. And that's where it can become a toxic situation. Maybe even the people aren't, monsters or anything like that. I think
Absolutely.
sometimes people get it in their heads. It's like this one extreme or the other. And it's not, it can be very subtle things that start to suck away um, the foundations of our health. Like you said, not sleeping and the stress and just kind of having that constantly on your mind eats away at you. So it is toxic. The effects of it is toxic. And I've definitely gone through that. And I've realized that you do kind of have to grieve that relationship like they physically died and having to bless and release them, let them go and just go, I have a firm faith as well. And I give it up to God. And I trust that miracles can happen. I know He has the power to change hearts. And I don't want to push anyone into my will. I just need people to respect me and my wishes. And that's the bottom line. And if
Absolutely.
people can't do that, then how is there any type of relationship to be had? Because relationship is two ways. So what what was it like for you? Like maybe just for people who are in that situation now, who kind of can go, uh-huh, I know there's that situation, that person, and I know it's going to be painful and ugly, but maybe what do you wish you would have known back then or someone would have told you?
I think first and foremost, you need to be honest with yourself about like, is everything you did the right thing? Or, are you 100% on board? Because if you aren't 100, like it, for us, like we know our values, and this is a part of our key values and our health. And so it was something we weren't going to give on. There's other things, like you said, she's not a horrible person or her husband or her family at all. But she is controlling, and I there's been other things in the past that it's my husband's sister, so he's had riffles with her about this and that, and we've looked back and been like, we could have been more giving on that, like we could have done something. So I think it's really important to know your boundaries so that you can set them, because if you don't know what your boundaries are, and you're not going to be able to set those for yourself or for other people. So I think that is really important. And then knowing enough to give yourself that grace, and for us, that self-love, that self-care, we need to take care of our body first. Especially now that we have a little girl, she's watching what we do. She sees this. Our nieces and nephews that weren't involved were talking about it. So it affects the whole family. And knowing that, It was okay, we can drag this on or we can just stand our ground. Like we kind of were walking on eggshells because we didn't want to cut her out. And we had a feeling she was going to. And we were like, we, for the best of the family, we don't want her to do that to anyone. Um, but at the end of the day, we really had to put ourselves first, and it all come back to our values and our own self-care, like you had mentioned, like the health. Um, it plays a huge role, and you don't always realize it until after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
For us living that holistic lifestyle, I had been there and kind of done that. I had lived life on autopilot. I'd come home to be with my daughter. So I felt what getting that stress back or relieving that stress can do. And I knew that I was to that point that I needed something to change. And my husband's working full time. He works his butt off. I mean, I know you know that. Like, we do too at home, but the stress adding up on him, most people don't realize what it does for their body until it's gone.
Yeah.
And so I think that is just huge. That self care of knowing I need to put my body and my health first for not only me, but my kids. That was really important.
Absolutely. And there have been many different instances where we've noticed toxicity seeping in ways, places, people that we just did not realize. We never would have thought from the surface. But then, following God, Holy Spirit pulling us out of different situations and or just revealing in a very catalytic kind of thing, like the true nature of some people or just where they were at that time, going, okay, yeah, that really clearly lays out what's going on here. So then I think going back to what you had said too, like having that clear boundary with yourself first. What is okay to me? What is kind of a blurry line? That's kind of a pass. And then what's a good hard no? What's a yes? So then when those situations come up, it makes it so much easier to deal with the emotional aspect of it. If logically you can go, okay, referring back to that, chart
Right.
or whatever it is, of your values. But I mean, there's relieving that is so freeing in so many ways. And I think without that, it's like being stuck. So there's no way we can fully grow or mature into who we're supposed to be until we kind of let that stuff get out of our lives. And maybe it's just for a season. And I think too, like the more empowered we get, the more firm we can be in our beliefs, it is going to repel some people. And we have to learn to be okay with that.
Yeah. And it's hard. And I think the other is something else I know, um, that you touched on it, that it made me remind setting your values. I think it's important to know that your values can change. My values, 5 years ago were definitely not the same. But I didn't set boundaries back then, and I can distinguish that because my values also changed with that. Once I wrote down my values and my husband wrote down his, and we came together and said, okay, let's make this we're united. That's when we could really set boundaries because otherwise your boundaries change too.
Oh,
And it's okay for them to change, but change intentionally, not change per situation. I think that was really important because it definitely did for me previously, and I saw how toxic that was for me. Um, and it was like, well, how does so and so know if it's what how, what they can and can't do or what my values are if I'm changing per situational, and that's not fair to other people either. So or yourself. So I think that's important to know.
absolutely. And just going more into the boundaries for anyone who it may help. I've had, like I mentioned, I've had extensive, unfortunately, extensive experience with this. And just what I've learned is I kind of do like a stage thing now. So if someone shows that they're not respectful of me or they have that attitude of mocking, bullying, first off, I'm not going to tolerate bullying, period. and those behaviors. I think some people may not even realize it, but having that conversation with them and letting them know, is this really how you meant for this to come out? And then most times it'll be no. And then go, okay, well, this is kind of how it looked to me, and here's why. Just giving them that opportunity. It's kind of like a three strikes you're out type deal, but it varies depending on the situation, of course. So some things are so extreme that, you go straight to goodbye and having
Right.
to learn on that stuff. And I think, especially if you have a spouse, you have to have those conversations. Going back, those times when I didn't have the boundaries set was when I let people walk all over me, and it, questioned myself, the guilt, and I was still miserable and just struggled so much harder. So having that, like, figuring out what those like three steps, the warnings are until it's a good hard no, is, I think that's another thing to add in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think um, you get how you said you kind of you do ask, hey, do you realize, like, is this what you meant by that? I remember when I just sat and wondered if that's what they meant by that. And then, it happens over and over again. So you're like, well, it has to be, until you call them out. And it's, I shouldn't even say call them out, because you just, is this what you meant by that? And because that's how it came off.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll know within the next few times you talk to those people, they'll change the way they talk to you if that's not what they meant, or it's going to
Right.
continue happening. And that's when you know, okay, I know you're seeing their true colors and where their intentions are. If they are being that bully, being deceitful, on purpose, or if it's like, okay, well, they truly did have an accident. They didn't mean it that way. Because I think I was very loose with my words when I was younger too. I've learned so much in the last few years about, wow, that's not what I meant. Thank you for calling me out. And my husband is so good at that. And I've gotten very good at just thinking about it a little bit more, and who you're talking to. You can talk a little more freely with some people than you can others. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not changing your values and your boundaries and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And going into that of living authentically, not changing who you are, we can be tolerant and listen to people who have a variation of beliefs or lifestyle choices that are so different than ours. Parenting is a huge thing. that that was one of the first things where I realized I was plunged into this world of very opinionated people who had no problem telling me everything I was doing wrong in parenting. I had one stranger, as I was going into the store with my little guy, say that if I didn't buy him candy, I was a horrible parent. A family member said if I didn't give him Gatorade, which going into the dyes and artificial stuff in there, I wasn't going to. And he told me that my son was going to grow up to resent me for not giving him Gatorade. So there's all those things. And like, being a people pleaser, if you've had a history of abuse or been beaten down emotionally, or just never been in that position to really put your, you know, feet down and grow a backbone and use it, it can be very challenging. So, going into that, how to be authentic when you have all these voices coming at you. I mean, I think every single person has that. If you are plugged into any type of social media, if you have conversations with anyone these days. So, what's your best advice, or how are you, even if you're not perfect in it, what do you do when you have all those voices coming at you that make you question yourself?
I think community is one thing. It's super important to surround yourself with people who, they don't have to support, you don't have to agree with everything, but they're supporting people. Um, I am in holistic groups. And some are not holistic. There's trolls in there. Some are great at just, okay, there's only one holistic way. Um,
Right.
there isn't. So I think it's important, just surrounding yourself with people that are uplifting, and you're going to have a few in regardless where you're at. But I'm even in this cloud group, and I kid you not, it's a Facebook group of people posting pictures of different clouds all over the world. And it's stuff like that that brightens your day and puts a smile on your face. It's getting around the family that does support you, the friends that do support you, and remembering, if you have your values, your core values down, think back to those, because you're, one of my mentors, your mentors, I know, she always says there's always going to be 5% that hates you regardless. You
Yeah.
can have the cure for cancer and they're still going to say it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
so I always keep that in the back of my mind. Regardless what I'm doing, I shared something on Instagram one time and I had a guy say, "What is this even about? Why did this show up on my feed?" And I was like, "Go buy it. Like, you can, or like, skip by it. I don't know how it showed up on your feed. Like, we're not following each other. It's things like, did someone, they left a rude comment, and at first, a few years ago, I would have been like bummed, and I probably wouldn't have made another post about that same sort of thing. But I just deleted the comment and moved on, because it was like, okay, well, I'm sorry it offended you. And it was a picture of my garden, I think it was. And it was like, I'm sorry that my flowers offended you. I don't know how it showed up in your post. So I try to remember there's always going to be that handful of people
Hmm.
that disagree or don't like something just because, for no reason.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill to swallow too, because I feel like I'm so accepting, and I've really worked on being non-judgmental. So it sounds so much easier. I make it sound very easy. I know it, because it's still things that I struggle with and that I have to remind myself of. But it's important to remember and to know, okay, I need to remind myself there's still going to be those haters. There's having enough respect for yourself
Hmm.
to say, okay, now I'm going to go look at some clouds, or now I'm going to go to a business group that I'm in to see some of what the other people are accomplishing today. Because that too, for me, seeing what other people are doing helps motivate me too. Okay, well, when I'm in a lull, what's going to pick me up? Find those things for you. If it's looking at clouds, maybe it's flowers, whatever it is, surround yourself with those things. That way, when the bad stuff hits you, you know what you can go to get lifted up.
Hmm. Exactly. And just for me, I have a history of severe panic attacks and CPTSD, things like that. So when I would find myself getting into that place, or even with depression, I found that having kind of like a bullet point list of things to go to remind myself, do this, do this, do this, go stand out in the sun, go drink extra water, go play or snuggle with your kids, go take extra time in the bathroom washing your face, put on a face mask, little things like that, turning on the music and dancing. Just, I actually have a playlist called Connect, and that's just things that help me remember who I am, to clear away the noise, and then get grounded and remember my purpose in life, my path. And it just helps kind of wash away that stuff. And, like you said, like there's always going to be those people. And for me, learning to accept that and know that says more about them. And they have no idea who I am or what I stand for, nor do they even care.
Right.
So that's just the place that they're at that point in time. It's not a judgment. They could have just watched a loved one get sick and pass away, or, you know, miscarriages and all these things. We don't know where they're at, but that doesn't mean we have to accept their behavior either. So that's another thing to throw in there talking about boundaries and everything. There's definitely time and place for a grace card, but giving grace doesn't mean just enabling someone in their bad behavior either. So, on that note, our time has already been eaten away today. So, just want to thank you so much, and I'll give it back to you for any final words.
Absolutely. No, thank you again for having me. It's always great chatting with you. And this was a subject that is kind of near and dear to my heart because I feel like we all suffer from it in
Mhm.
some way, shape, or form. But it's something that I know for myself, um, I didn't really accept and acknowledge for a long time. And I know other people are in that same boat where they pretend almost it's not happening because they don't want to face it. So um, I know, if there's someone out here that is watching and that is you, you're not alone. Um, Daily affirmations are huge for me to get going in that right mindset, and that kind of helps me face things head on. And I would highly suggest adding that in if you don't do that. And I just know you're not alone. Surround yourself, like you said, make that bullet point list, whatever it is that's going to uplift you. Those things that you can go back to. I keep a list in my wallet because it's something I can always go back to that I generally always have with me wherever I am. So I hope it was helpful us chatting with you guys today. It was fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one final nugget for me, I will say what helps me the most is having a community of like minded, like hearted people who you can just share those things with and empower each other. Just that little bit of encouragement, too. Of you're doing a great job. I appreciate this. Little things like that mean so much to just help you get through some of those icky times. So, all right. Thank you again so much. And that is all for our chat today. Bye.